It begins like a whisper that refuses to stay quiet. The Epstein Files, often described as America's Pandora's box, are not just a collection of documents. They are a mirror held up to power itself. Page after page, email after email, flight log after flight log, these files tell a story of influence, secrecy, and moral collapse at the highest levels of global authority. What was once dismissed as conspiracy theory has slowly transformed into a political earthquake, one that Washington can no longer contain. For years, these documents remained sealed, buried under layers of legal protection and political hesitation. But pressure never disappeared. It grew, inside the media, among civil society, and crucially, within the American political system itself. From the moment Donald Trump returned to the center of U.S. power, demands for transparency resurfaced with renewed intensity. Even members of his own Republican Party began asking a dangerous question: what exactly is being hidden and why? After months of resistance, denial, and strategic silence, the tone finally shifted. In November 2025, President Donald Trump gave his consent to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It was a decision framed as a victory for openness, but it came with irony. Because within those very files, Trump's own name appeared repeatedly, not as a footnote, not as an afterthought, but as part of a broader web of elite connections that spanned decades. As the first wave of documents emerged, social media exploded. Internal emails, handwritten notes, and private travel records painted a disturbing picture. Names followed, one after another. Former President Bill Clinton, world-renowned physicist Stephen Hawking, global pop icon Michael Jackson, and then, more unexpectedly, contemporary power brokers, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and others whose influence shapes the modern world. Each mention reignited the same question: association or accusation? Then came the second wave. On a Friday that would redefine political discourse far beyond U.S. borders, the Department of Justice released more than 3 million additional documents linked to the Epstein investigation. This was not a symbolic release, it was a data dump of unprecedented scale. And buried within those pages was a detail that sent shockwaves across South Asia and the Middle East alike. The name of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi appeared. According to a 2017 email included in the files, a claim was made that Modi had engaged in cultural performances, song and dance, during an Israel visit, allegedly as part of an effort to please then-President Donald Trump. The timing raised eyebrows. Just weeks before Modi's historic July 2017 visit to Israel, the first ever by an Indian prime minister, he had held a bilateral meeting with Trump in Washington. The implication was explosive: that Modi's Israel trip was not merely a diplomatic milestone for India, but part of a broader strategic alignment driven by Trump's geopolitical objectives. Within hours, Indian politics ignited. The Congress Party, India's main opposition, labeled the allegations a national humiliation and demanded a full explanation. Parliamentary debates turned volatile. Television studios ran non-stop coverage. Meanwhile, the Modi administration categorically rejected the claims, calling them fabricated, malicious, and politically motivated. But the damage was already done. Because in politics, perception often matters as much as proof. To understand why these files matter so deeply, one must revisit Jeffrey Epstein himself. Epstein was not merely a criminal, he was a gatekeeper. A financier with mysterious wealth, he moved effortlessly among presidents, princes, scientists, and billionaires. For years, he was accused of operating a sophisticated network of sexual exploitation, allegedly supplying underage girls to powerful individuals at his luxury properties, including his private island. In 2019, Epstein was found dead in a New York jail cell. Officially ruled a suicide, his death immediately triggered global suspicion. Surveillance cameras malfunctioned. Guards failed to check on him. Evidence gaps appeared. To this day, many believe Epstein died with secrets that could have reshaped world politics. The release of these files reopened those wounds. What we are witnessing now is not just scandal, it is structural exposure. These documents force a reckoning with how power protects itself. They reveal a system where influence buys silence, where accountability is delayed until it becomes unavoidable. From Washington to New Delhi, from Tel Aviv to London, the implications are profound. Political leaders now face a public that is no longer satisfied with the denials. The question is no longer whether names appear in the files. The question is what those appearances truly represent, and who benefits from ambiguity. This brings us to the present moment, a moment defined by uncertainty, denial, and strategic recalibration. The United States government insists the document release proves institutional transparency. Critics argue it proves the opposite, that truth only emerges when secrecy becomes politically inconvenient. Trump's allies claim the president acted courageously. Opponents argue he acted too late, and only when pressure became unbearable. Internationally, allies are uneasy. Adversaries are watching closely. Because if the Epstein Files teach us anything, it is this. Power is interconnected, and when one node is exposed, the entire network trembles. What happens next is not just a legal question. It is a geopolitical one. As governments scramble to manage fallout, the Epstein Files are reshaping diplomatic calculations. For the United States, the immediate challenge is credibility. Washington has long positioned itself as a global advocate for human rights and rule of law. But when allegations implicate its own leadership class, moral authority weakens. For India, the stakes are equally high. Narendra Modi's international image has been carefully cultivated as that of a decisive nationalist leader who elevated India's global standing. Any suggestion, however unproven, of personal or strategic subservience to foreign leaders undermines that narrative. Even if the claims are false, the need to respond diverts political capital and weakens diplomatic momentum. Israel, too, finds itself indirectly implicated. Modi's 2017 visit was widely celebrated as a turning point in India-Israel relations, especially in defense and technology and intelligence cooperation. Reframing that visit as part of a third party's strategy risks complicating an otherwise robust partnership. Then there is the broader strategic question: who gains from this exposure? In the short term, opposition parties benefit domestically. Media organizations gain unprecedented attention. Social platforms profit from outrage-driven engagement. But in the long term, systemic distrust grows. Citizens begin to question not just individual leaders, but the entire architecture of elite governance. Economically, uncertainty carries cost. Markets dislike instability. When political leaders face credibility crises, investor confidence wavers. Defense deals, technology partnerships, and trade negotiations slow as governments reassess risk. Now consider the what-if scenarios. What if further documents emerge linking active world leaders to Epstein's network more directly? What if testimony, not just names, surfaces? What if courts, domestic or international, are forced to act? In such a scenario, we could see resignations, impeachment efforts, and diplomatic freezes. Strategic alliances could fracture under public pressure. Countries might distance themselves from leaders deemed politically toxic, even without legal convictions. Alternatively, there is another possibility: normalization. History shows that power often absorbs scandal, public outrage fades, news cycles move on. If no decisive legal action follows, the Epstein Files may become just another chapter in a long history of unpunished elite misconduct. Transparency in that case becomes performative rather than transformative. This is the real crossroads. Either these revelations mark the beginning of a new era of accountability, or they become proof that even total exposure cannot dismantle entrenched power. From a strategic standpoint, the United States must decide whether it wants genuine reform or controlled disclosure. India must choose between defensive denial and proactive clarification. Global institutions must decide whether silence preserves stability or merely postpones collapse. In the end, the Epstein Files are not about one man. They are about a system where influence moves faster than justice, where borders cannot contain scandal, and where the truth, once released, cannot be put back into the box. The world is watching, not with shock anymore, but with expectation. Because after Pandora's box is opened, the only question that remains is this: will accountability follow, or will power once again outrun